Anne Fernandez is a seasoned out-of-body explorer who has left her body thousands of times. She says it feels like she's died thousands of times without actually dying. But then one night, death came for her too. In this episode, Anne shares the powerful truth that she's learned about how to experience the other side directly without dying. Comment and let me know what you think about this episode. And if you have a powerful spiritual experience that you would like to share on the show, find the link to apply to be a guest in the description box below. You have had an NDE, you've had so many spiritual journeys in and out of the matrix, and today we're going to learn about those. Well, I'll ask you to go in whatever order makes the most sense, but maybe we could start with the first experience that you had.
Okay, yeah. Probably when I was 7. So I was born and raised in an island in the Caribbean in Trinidad, but I was raised in a small village surrounded by sugarcane fields, no television, no electricity. And so I think I was about 7. And I remember just waking up and seeing this figure standing at the foot of my bed. And I said, I said, "Who are you?" And it says, "I'm Jesus." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I went back to sleep. Well, interestingly enough, I never thought about all these experiences I had growing up because I thought they were just natural. I mean, I would lay in the sugarcane fields and look up at the sky and just get lost in these other dimensions and didn't really have a name for any of it until I came to America later on. So what I realized, one of the things I realized is that I grew up in a small village with again no electricity and all of that. So nature was my playground, and the people around me were Hindus, Muslims. My mother was Catholic, and I got to experience all of those different religions, and we celebrated together. So there was no separateness, right? And so I always thought, well, why Jesus? And other entities started showing up after that. But I would tell my mom, "Oh, by the way, we're going to go to America." And she would look at me and tap me on the head and go, "Okay," you know, and just kind of smile at me. Of course, we ended up coming to America. So somehow as a child, I had that, vision, right? So years later, my mom, especially knowing that we had to move from the islands, otherwise I would probably be working in a sugarcane field, um, taught my dad to coming to America, and he was very afraid of doing that. But she finally convinced him, and 5 kids, mom and dad, came to Miami and lived in a one-room motel. And my spiritual experiences with nature still continued because I was just thrown into this culture and had to sort of figure things out myself. So I would go down to the beach, I would sit, listen to the ocean, walk in the sand, and sit under the palm trees and try to recreate those same visions I had when I was a child. And so I started having more of those experiences again. But I went through a period, and by the way, I wrote a book that's on Amazon. And I always tell people if you read my book, the middle part is about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And not necessarily in that order. But here I was as a teenager thrown into a culture and no one to help me figure it out. So I had all of these experiences. However, there were times I felt that my life could have gone down the wrong path, but there was always an energy, if you will, that was around me that somehow inwardly I would be told, don't do that, don't go there, or don't be with this person. And again, I never questioned, well, who was it or why was this happening until later on. So moved out to California and got married and had my children. And every single night I would wake up to energies at the foot of my bed. my husband would be sound asleep, but I would wake up and I would be like, I'm so groggy. I just want to go back to sleep. Leave me alone. And so I was told, well, if you want to go back to sleep, get up and write. And so I was like, okay, fine. So I'd get up and just write anything. I'd write a poem, I'd write something, and I'd go back to sleep. But what started happening after that was people that I knew who passed, they would show up when I was just in a zone doing something. They would just show up and appear and say, hi, I just came to say goodbye and smile, and then they would leave. And it's so interesting that I was never shocked at any of this stuff. It was like, okay, this is normal. This is what happens to me. Uh, and so that happened for a while until probably right after my divorce when I was going through a very difficult time. And I was laying on my couch one night and didn't have much money and my kids and so on. Anyway, sleeping on my couch, and I woke up to this sweet smell that permeated my whole body. It wasn't just like a normal smell and it goes away. This one filled my whole body and it woke me up. I sat up and I saw this shimmering figure in the corner of my room. And I said, who are you? And he said, I'm Michael the Archangel, and I will always protect you. And I'm getting chills just explaining this to you right now, because afterwards I kept searching for that smell. I'd walk around and smell all these plants, but nothing, nothing ever smelled like that again.
If you've been feeling disconnected from spirit, disconnected from divine love, I have an offering for you. I now offer one-on-one energy work sessions. It's my very favorite work that I've ever done. I completely rebalance your energy field and give you a transfusion of divine love and healing energy for any specific area of need, and follow it up with feedback on what I find in your energy field, a little bit of spiritual coaching, and simple takeaway practices that you can take into your life and implement to help you cultivate a deep connection with divine love. I offer 30-minute sessions, 45-minute sessions, and I'm currently offering 50% off on my 4-session package. Check the link in the description to sign up.
I'd walk around and smell all these plants, but nothing, nothing ever smelled like that again. And so he's always been with me and always protects me. And I can sometimes say to him, can we use your sort of light to heal something or to create peace? And he would say, absolutely. So I have this wonderful connection with him. And of course, with Jesus, who showed up when I was 7. Well, being on my own after so many years of being married, I kept having these experiences again. My bed would shake at night. I would wake up and, just want to go to sleep. And then I would see these orbs like floating across my room. And a couple of times I reached out and while I was half asleep, I reached out like this and ended up touching one of them and my hand would buzz. So I go away, I want to sleep. So, um, and then again, people would show up and like, well, if you give this person a message for me, you can go back to sleep. I was like, okay, fine. So not having anyone to talk to, and of course, I was afraid to share all these experiences at that time. And I found a place in Virginia called the Monroe Institute. And someone had told me about them, and I said, I'm going to call them up and explain what's going on, see if they can answer my questions. So they said, oh, would you like to come to one of our programs? And when they told me how much it was, I said, oh, no, I can't afford that. I'm just divorced. So she hung up, and I thought, next day my phone rang, and she said, hi, somebody canceled, and they've paid, and we'd love to have you. So
Ah,
talk about meant to be, right?
yeah.
So then my dad, I called him up and said, hey, I want to go to Virginia. This is what's happening. And he says, well, let me buy you the ticket. So that was it. I went there and stayed for a week where you have no phones, no clocks, no distractions, and you just meditated all the time. And in the evenings is the only time you would talk to the group of people and share your experiences. I had just some amazing out of body experiences during that process. There was one where I was just drifting into space, and it was the most beautiful feeling. And then this wall went up in front of me. And so in the meditation, I'm saying, what is this? I want to keep going. And then a voice said, put on your crown. And it was interesting. I was holding a crown in my hand. I didn't realize that. And they said, if you want to go any further, you must put on your crown. Well, something in me knew immediately what that meant, that I had to honor myself and honor my own sovereignty and my sacredness. And that was something I was working on in my life. And so I put the crown on my head hesitantly, and the wall collapsed, and I was able to keep going and journeying. So, one of the things I'd love to share with you and your audience, Melissa, is that all of these experiences that happen, they can relate to everyday life. And that's what's important to me. They're like metaphors and analogies and all the messages, whether they're subtle or whether they're intense, they always can relate back to where you are in your life and the journey that you're taking. So I feel that it's all there to help us all. We just have to go into stillness and we can journey to any part of the cosmos that we wish. So I wanted to go back now to a few years later as these experiences kept building. And now I felt more comfortable, talking to people about it. So in my work as a clinical hypnotherapist and life coach, I would not tell people that I am tapping in, but a lot of messages would be channeled for that person. And I would just share it with them and help them in that way. Um, One of the things that was very, very powerful to me. I'm in meditation, and all of a sudden I'm standing in this place that looked like a palace. And I said, where am I? And it said, you're in the fifth dimension. And this is about 20 years ago. And so I said, oh, okay, whatever. I didn't understand any of that. And then all of a sudden I saw all these crystal rooms that I could enter. I could go into all these rooms, and they all represented the chakras in the body. So there were all these different colors. And then there was a council of 12 that was sort of sitting around, and they were sort of tapping their hands like this. And so I kind of looked at them and I said, what? And by the way, this is how I talk to my guides and my ascended masters. I think they always speak to us according to where we are. I have a sense of humor, so they will also, have a sense of humor when they're connecting with me. So I said, what is this for? And they said, well, you know what you're meant to be doing. So get with the program, And so, and basically what they were saying was, don't hold back, stop holding back. Just put it out there, and you will end up helping others and helping yourself. And don't worry about the people that are naysayers. Um, and so, because of that experience, I started adding more and more of these experiences into my work and doing public speaking and so on. But what I was told when I was in that fifth dimension and this place, it was called the Temple of Knowledge and Wisdom. And I was told that it was a spiritual hub, and that from that fifth dimension hub, I could journey further out of the matrix, and I can also meet other guides in the same space. So I kept going back there almost every day in my meditation. And then one day, this almost looked like an older king showed up. And I said, hi. And he said, hi, I'm Seth. And I said, okay, what do you want? And he handed me this scepter and he said, now it's your turn. And I said, to do what? And he said, to channel me. And I said, well, are you Seth from Seth Speaks from the 60s and 70s? And he says, yes, one and the same. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I never read the books. All I know is that, that existed. And he said, perfect, because I am Set Speaks has returned. And this is a new time, a new day. We're moving into a new earth. And so the energy and the channeling is going to be different. So I said, okay, what do you want me to do with this? And he said, put it on YouTube. And I said, what do you know about YouTube? And he laughed and I laughed. So it was after that I was very nervous about stepping out there and channeling. But I started something on Facebook called Set Speaks has returned. Well, of course, I got people who loved it, and then I got people who said, we are part of this organization from back in the day with Jane Roberts, and nobody else. Seth doesn't speak to anyone else. And I thought, wow, that is so not spiritual, to have that belief and to be locked into that space where, any angels and guides and ascended masters are here for all of us. So if they choose to speak to someone else, that is absolutely possible. So anyway, I kind of slowed down on channeling on there, but now I do channel for a group called Oracle. And I work with my clients either doing my hypnotherapy or channeling, whatever, modality would work best for them. But what I wanted to share is journeying, into the fifth dimension, into that space, and then suddenly being told that I could go further. And so one day in my meditation, I'm in that space looking into all the crystal rooms and laying there and getting some healing, which, by the way, it's so amazing when we can go into these other dimensions, we can actually help heal our bodies. I mean, there's technology, there's frequencies and vibrations that are really powerful, and that I think sooner or later we're going to have that here. It's coming. It's coming.
I hope so.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, I'm in meditation, and all of a sudden, I'm in a space, and it's called the 12th dimension because I always ask where I am. Oh, you're in the 12th dimension. Okay. And there were different entities there, or ascended masters, if you will. And then this beautiful female energy, it was just like a swirling energy just moving around. And I was looking into a tunnel. I was standing at the edge of a tunnel and I couldn't see any further. And so she started speaking to me, of course, inwardly, and said, this is where you go through when you die and where you come through when you were born. And so I stepped back immediately. I was like, okay, I'm not ready. And then she said, it's okay. And she called herself Mother Matrix. That was the name that she gave me to call her by, to refer to her. So I left. And I kept going back in my meditations and just kind of observing and looking at the tunnel, because that's the other thing. No matter where we are, whether it's on this level, on other dimensions, on other timelines, we always get to choose. We always have free choice. And so finally, I went back and I said, okay, I'm ready to go through the tunnel. And she said, well, you're going to have to leave your physical body behind because only your spirit can go through to the other side. And I said, oh, like an out of body experience? And she said, yes. And so she said, but I will take care of your body. I will protect your body until you return. So I remember just kind of going, okay, I'm ready for this. And all of a sudden, I was just catapulted down to this tunnel. And I came out on the other side, and it was just all beautiful. Everything was white, but a white that you've never seen here, on Earth. It's just a beautiful white energy, and there were different forms just drifting and floating around. And what I could feel and what I could tell is that these were all powerful, amazing beings who were here at one time on Earth. but that had passed and gone to the other side. Because I could pick up on their intelligence, on their just a beautiful energy. And so I thought, wow, this is great. I could probably learn a whole lot of stuff from all these entities here. And so I sort of floated around for a while and spoke to a couple. When I say speak, I mean inwardly connecting. Oh, and there's another thing that there's no such thing as male or female. There's no such thing as, using, verbally to connect. Everything is happening from within, intuitively. And so I had some conversations and then I came back through the tunnel. And it was interesting. It was like as soon as I came through, I was back in my body. And then I could come back down through the matrix and back to where I was sitting and meditating at the time. So what I wanted to share is that you don't have to die. You don't have to have an NDE to travel the cosmos. We all have the ability to do that. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear this because I do a lot of speaking and they're like, oh, come on, there's got to be some other magical way to do this. When I say meditate, meditate every day, have a practice because the only way out is in. I just love that saying that the only way out is in. And so the more you go in and develop that inner muscle, the easier it becomes to journey wherever you want. So the other thing that started happening was I started connecting with timelines. So I started connecting with other aspects of myself in these timelines. And at first, when it would happen, I would go into a meditation, and all of a sudden, I'm in Africa and I'm in this hole in the ground. And, I was beaten and put there because I was doing some kind of voodoo or something like that. Um, and so I started seeing other timelines where I was having similar type experiences. And so the way my brain works is I would come back from these and go, okay, how does this relate to my life now? My consciousness is here now. And it all made sense because I had so much fear about sharing my energy healing work, all of the things I did, my psychic work, everything. I was afraid. And once I had those experiences, I was able to heal from it and overcome the fear and now just be more open about, what I do. But that was so powerful to me to have had seen all of those different lifetimes or timelines, if you will, which I don't know what your beliefs are, but it's all happening at once. Um, all of those timelines are happening at once. And so, again, a lot of growth in this current life happened from all of those. So there's a million more experiences that happen, and it's just so wonderful. I have to tell you that I spend a lot of time in nature because when I am alone in nature, it's like not just here on this planet, but everything opens up. Everything opens up for me. And I feel the true oneness and connection with everything. No? Um, but I wanted to share something with you that I guess we can call it an NDE because I felt like I had so many out of body experiences. I felt like I had died 1,000 times and came back into my body. But this one, I woke up in the middle of the night around 3 o'clock, that bewitching hour, and I couldn't move. I just could not move my body. And I couldn't open my eyes because every time I opened my eyes, I would feel like I was going to throw up. Uh, and somehow I made it to the bathroom. I threw up and I carried my cell phone with me. But I'm laying on the bathroom floor and I was able to call 911. And so I actually called a friend and said, please call 911. And I just put the phone down. And people came, ambulance came, and I couldn't open my eyes. I have never seen who helped me. And so they took me in the ambulance. And on the way, I said to the person that I guess was giving me an IV, I'm going to go unconscious. And I have no idea what he said to me after that. Because all of a sudden, I am floating like slowly and peacefully down this tunnel. And again, it was completely white, like a white. Again, I wish I could see that color here, like all the colors you see when you journey out of the matrix. They're just so vibrant and different. So I'm floating down this tunnel, and I'm hearing nothing else, completely gone and unconscious. And somehow I'm getting this message: you're dying. You're leaving your body. You are dying. And something in me said, maybe it's not my time. I don't think it's my time. And then my mother and my brother, who passed like 30 years ago, showed up. I saw them. And then they said, you need to come back. You're not done yet. And so when that happened, then I remember being aware of this person giving me something in the IV and, bringing me to. So out of body experience, NDE, again, I just feel like we have the opportunity to have those experiences without physically dying. But I think the message is, when it does happen to any of us, because at some point we're all going to be there, just to know that it is peaceful, it's beautiful, and oh, there were angels standing around me. That's what I forgot to tell you. There were angels standing around me, and they were all dressed in white and just beautiful and all smiling. And I felt safe, and I felt completely at peace. And truth be told, I wanted to keep going, but obviously it wasn't time. So I just want people to know that don't be afraid of death. There's no such thing anyway. And I've definitely learned that we just leave our bodies, but we're still alive. We go on. We transform, we go on. Maybe we go to other timelines, maybe we come back. But death is not something to be afraid of.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences, Anne. There's so much that I could ask you about. I
Sure.
wanted to comment on what you said about nature. It's the
Mm.
same way for me.
Oh.
It's just this energetic frequency, or I don't know how to describe it, that you can
Right.
pick up on when you're in nature and you can feel the oneness of everything.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
so uplifting and beautiful.
Yes. And I'm going to admit on here, and your listeners are going to hear this, but I talk to trees.
Me too. You're not alone.
Kindred spirit. I sometimes I'll sit under a tree and I'm trying to deal with something in life, and I've talked to friends and I'm still in confusion, and I'll just sit under a tree and I'll say, grandmother, you know, here's what I'm going through right now, and I need some clarity. And then I'll just close my eyes and sit there for a while. And sure enough, the answer wells up within me. It's just beautiful.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And you said that when you were a child, you had many childhood experiences with nature. Did
Yes.
they, the trees speak to you in the same way when you were a child?
Well, it's interesting because, again, I didn't have guidance or the vocabulary for what was happening. So the experiences were natural, right? But what would happen is when I knew that we were going to come to America, I was sitting on the top of my favorite tree, looking over the sugarcane fields, and I had a vision. So in a way, they were connecting with me. I just didn't know how to describe any of it. And so I was already having visions as a child. I feel like I've had all these experiences, and when they happen naturally. I'm not looking for them, searching for them. I'm not trying to force anything to happen. So they happen when I'm in stillness, when I'm in silence. And then Afterwards, then my thinking mind goes, what was that? What does that mean? How did, But I think it's most important to just completely get out of our logical thinking mind. And that's where the magic happens.
I'm so glad you brought that up because one of the most common questions that I get from people is how can I have an experience? How can I connect to my guides or
Right,
God or whatever language people are using? Why can't I have that experience? And there's so many different techniques that people teach about how to have spiritual experiences, but I think that what you just said is the key. When we
right,
try to make it happen or try to control it, we're blocking it.
right. And that's with anything in our lives. I've learned, I mean, and it was quite a journey. I wasn't always like that. But, it's like, okay, I have to have this and I have to make that happen and do. But even just in my everyday life with anything, I've learned how to surrender. And the key is to trusting because you have to trust that when you surrender and you're vulnerable, that can be a scary place for a lot of people, right? But when you surrender to life, everything opens up, And so even when I have a challenge, let's just say something is really challenging me in my life. At first, initially, I do the human thing like, okay, I'm going to push that away and I'm going to do this and do that. And when I just go into meditation and I open myself up and I say, you know what? I'm going to be in stillness and I'm going to let this pass. And everything passes much quicker than when I try to fight it or push it away or make something happen. So I think that's the key.
So beautifully said. And it can be so hard for people to get into that state because we're so programmed to try to make things happen or figure things out or fix things. And
Right. Right.
just the experience of surrendering, being present, and not worrying about it, letting go of it,
Right.
ultimately gets us to where we want to go because then things work out
Absolutely.
without us having to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been teaching meditation for 50 years now. And so
Mhm.
people will say, I can't meditate. And I say, you know what? Go walk in nature. Go by yourself, have no distractions, put your phone away, go walk in nature, sit under a tree, and don't have an expectation. Just be present in that moment. You can even do dishes and get into a meditative state. You can dance, you can listen to music, you can vacuum. Anything that you're doing where you're just in a zone can drop you into meditation. But for me, and I'm sure there's other ways, to me, that's the key because you're developing your own inner muscles through meditation.
You mentioned that in your experiences, you went to the fifth dimension and the 12th dimension. What are the differences between the dimensions?
So this, I can only share what I've experienced. So again, I was in meditation and Zoom. I was in fifth dimension. And that was what was called a spiritual hub. And I was told that myself and lots of other people I'm connected with use that same spiritual hub. And they can journey, further from that space. Or you can have beings come and meet you there. Like I've had other entities, Metatron, Ashtar, Commander Ashtar, all these entities, they just show up and, because sometimes they don't want to come further into this density. And so that's what I call my spiritual hub. And I believe that everyone, what I was told, has a spiritual hub, and that is in the fifth dimension. I didn't experience going through other dimensions. It was like I was zoomed into like 10th dimension, which I had an experience there, and then the 12th. And so I didn't go through like these steps. It was just, I went from there to that 12th dimension. And the difference is that in the 12th dimension, it was more energy. There was less density. So you felt more like, even though I was there and I experienced myself in my body, it just felt very free flowing, and light energy. There was a lightness. less thinking, less verbalizing, more intuition and that connection. You just reminded me, I would love to share something if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
So I I was laying on, I have a Reiki table, and I thought, oh, I'm going to lie there and do a meditation. And so a few years ago, I'm lying on that table and my eyes are closed. And all of a sudden, there's this blue being walking around my table. And I could see him as clear as day. I mean, just tall and blue and walking around my table. And so in my meditation, who are you? And he said, well, I am one of your group souls and I am from Sirius. And I said, okay, then why are you walking around my table like that? Like you're nervous. He goes, do you know how hard it is to be in this density? So,
Yes, I think we do.
and so we both laughed. And so then I said, okay, what do you have to tell me? And he said, well, that's where you're from, and that's where you'll go back when you leave. And you have a soul family here on Sirius. And at first, it takes me a while. I come out of these things and in my thinking mind, I'm like, what? You know, but after having the experience over and over again, it resonates and I make a connection with it, right? So after that, I just started journeying to Sirius. I've gone to different places on Sirius, met my soul family. It's just been amazing. Uh, Sometimes I refer to my friends when they ask me about my experiences. It's like, oh, you're like the Indiana Jones of the cosmos. It's like, I guess so. Um, I am joyful. I'm always a happy camper,
Mm.
probably 99.9% of the time in my life. And it's because I realized that it's not just me here, that I have access to everything in this universe, everything. And we all do. And I think the biggest thing I realize is that I am one with everything and everything is one with me. And when you not just know it intellectually, but when you feel it within that you are one with everything, I mean, how powerful is that? How can you not be joyful?
Yeah, exactly. And
Right?
I can feel that so strongly in your energy field, just the
Oh,
joy and lightness.
thank you. And by the way, a sense of humor is so important to me. Even when I'm doing a talk, I'm speaking to people who are all serious. I have to somehow find a way to make them laugh, because all my guides have told me this, that laughter is healing and laughter can also help you open up those channels as well.
That's so beautiful. I have to ask, I know this maybe this question is not answerable, but the
Mhm.
experience that you had with Michael the Archangel when you were woken up by a scent.
Yes,
Are you able to describe what that smelled like? I know people will be curious.
sure. I wish I could. I wish I could. Probably, okay, so I'm sort of making this up because it wouldn't even be. If you were to go to Hawaii and it had just rained, right? And all the flowers were blooming and opening up, and all the scents were in the air after a rain. That would probably be the closest. But what's interesting about it is, when you smell something, it's like goes through your nostrils and you smell it, and then it goes away or you walk away. This literally went into every part of my body, my lungs, my cells. It's like every part of my body became the scent. And I desperately wanted it so much. I kept trying to find it again, but to no avail.
Thank you so much for doing your best to describe that. I know so many things that we experience out of body are very difficult to describe and find words for here.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You mentioned that the main message you want to share with people. Well, maybe I'll let you share that. What is the
Mm.
main message that you want to share with people based on these experiences?
So I think I sort of interjected that a few times, but it's to recognize how powerful we are, that we have access to everything in this universe, not just here in the physical, on this, 3D world, but everywhere. But what we have to do is find a way to go into stillness because we're not going to connect. Yes, we can observe things as we walk around in our world, but to have those experiences, you have to go within. And I think what I shared with you was the only way out is in. And I think that's the key right there.
Yes, I love that. And also because as spiritually minded people, a lot of times we can be trying to get out of the body, have these transcendent experiences, raise our consciousness, whatever it may
Right,
be. And we're
right.
completely missing that the easiest way to access that experience is to just go within to the source of our being because that's
Right,
where what we are
right.
already.
Exactly. And this is probably another time, another episode, but all of those experiences I shared, it's all happening within anyway. It's all in here. I always tell people, so it's not fifth dimension is not a space, physical space, neither is the 12th. It's all in here. And so that's why it's so important to go within because that's where you have access to everything.
You mentioned that you want to share with people that we can have these kinds of experiences without dying because a lot of times
Yeah.
people will say, I want to have a near death experience.
Yeah.
But we don't need to die to be able to
Right.
connect. And
Right.
so I would love to give you a chance to share with people how can you have these kinds of spiritual experiences without dying?
Well, again, going within, meditating. And you can go in with an intention, but I think you and I talked about this. Don't try so hard. Just sit, be with yourself, be in silence, and just listen. The most important thing is trusting all the little idiosyncrasies, the little things that happen in our everyday life. Trusting those things. It could be like, oh, I just saw a shadow out of the corner of my eye. Trust that that is probably spirit visiting you. It could be that your lights flickered on and off, or just something happened. You were driving and you just missed having an accident. You were being guided. We are being guided all the time. We are not alone. There's angels, spirit guides, even family members who have passed. Everything is here to help us and support us. Oh, and by the way, when we raise our awareness and our consciousness, even if we do one little thing to do that, we are affecting everything on every level in this universe. And I know that's hard to understand, but if you change a thought or you put out some positive vibration out there, you have just affected everything on this planet and everything in this universe. And that's why they all work with us because we also assist them in raising their consciousness as well. Because in the very end, it's all about going home, isn't it? We're all on this journey here together, going back home to that oneness. And so, if we can support each other here and we can raise our frequency, we also support everyone on every dimension, on every level. So, everyone matters. Every single person matters. Nobody's left behind.
And would you like to share with people where they can find you and more about your work?
Oh, sure. So, my website is called risingawareness.com or just annfernandez.com. And I'm also a channeler on oracle.com as well. And I have a book on Amazon. If you want, I can hold it up there. Is that okay? Ah,
Yes, yes, go
yes.
for it.
So my book, can you see that?
There's a glare on it from the light. Yeah, there we
Okay.
go.
Well, it's called Moonlight on Wire. And that name came about because we never had electricity. on the islands. And when we got the first street light, all the locals ran out and said, "Look, moonlight on Pond Wire." So
I love it.
that's where that came from. And it's on Amazon. So,
Well, I have a couple questions that I ask all my guests. One of them we already covered, which is how
okay.
to experience the divine love and bliss while in the body.
hmm
Um, so instead, I would like to ask you, what is the most profound truth that you've brought back with you from your spiritual experiences?
Ah, wow. That's a great question. That's a great question. I'd have to say oneness. I know that people probably want to hear something more mystical or magical, but the truth is that it's not that complicated. Life is simple. It's this, and that's why I became a hypnotherapist because I deal with this filing system and this hard drive, everything that's filed in there. But if we can get out of that, we realize the truth. And the truth is that each one of us, no matter where we are on this journey, we have to stop looking at where someone else is and comparing ourselves and just trust that the path we're walking is in alignment with our purpose and our truth. And to me, that's the key when we can trust that alignment and walk our path.
Beautiful. And my final question is if you could give one message to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
Laugh a lot. Laugh, even when something hurts, even when something is uncomfortable. Laugh. And I know that sounds silly, but it's meant to be because my whole life, I grew up in an environment where laughter helped me heal after surgery. And I know it probably doesn't sound very spiritual, but laughter is so important because it creates that joy, within you. So I would have to say, laugh, meditate, go in nature.
Thank you so much for watching. My guests' links can be found in the description box. If you have had a near-death experience, pre-birth experience, out-of-body experience, past or between life memories, or spiritual awakening story that you would like to share, find the link to apply in the description box. If you would like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership at the Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.